And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, joined by my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Just sick of this cold weather. Waiting for today could be wearing a short sleeve shirt and shorts and being at City Field. And the only time I want to deal with getting a brain freeze is eating ice cream. It's nothing worse than freaking going outside, freaking getting a brain freeze all day.
Yeah,
Having to
it's
deal with the fact once you go inside, you feel it all the whole time, all day.
yeah, man, it's true. Anybody in the New York area is definitely feeling this crappy cold right now. It's definitely winter sport weather right now, no doubt about it. As hockey and basketball are in full swing right now. We also got the tail end of the football playoffs now, where we are now through the divisional round. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but we know the AFC Championship game, we know the NFC Championship game, and we got a lot of fun breaking that down. If you want to get an even more in-depth discussion about that, you could check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Best Eating House podcast. $5 a month gets you in and everything, by the way. So we appreciate all the support over there. But speaking of football, Dan, before we get into anything else, I do think that this is something we've been talking about for a long time. The search of the New York Jets finally coming to an end, at least on the head coaching front. The Jets just earlier this afternoon named former player, former New York Jet himself, Aaron Glenn, who was here from 94 to 01, former first round pick of the New York Jets, comes back as the head coach, signs an official 5-year contract. So the Jets have him in, being the guy basically on this team at least through 2029. Aaron Glenn wasn't my first choice, although I do love the guy. Big fan of Aaron Glenn. I do remember him as a player. He's probably my second favorite DB ever to be on the Jets outside of Darrelle Revis. Big fan of Aaron Glenn. Glad to see him come back. The circumstances are what concern me. In a different place and time, under a different set of circumstances, Aaron Glenn would have been my top guy. No doubt about it. But the thing that I've gone into this whole process saying the most and screaming at you every week, Dan, we broke this down, is that the Jets need somebody that has done it before. We've heard all the candidates they've had, and 3 guys they didn't talk to, we could talk about right now real quick, are Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, and John Gruden. Still don't understand how those 3 guys with Super Bowl rings on their fingers weren't even called by the Jets for an interview as far as we know yet. But for whatever reason, the Jets were hell-bent on, once again, bringing in another defensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before. Let's break this down real quick, Dan. I'm sorry I'm kind of long-winded here real quick, but I'll wrap up in a sec. When you think about it, let's go back. Woody Johnson's tenure as owner started in 2000. Since then, they've hired Herm Edwards, a former defensive coordinator who had never been a head coach before. Eric Mangini, former defensive coordinator who had never been a head coach before. Rex Ryan, former defensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before. Todd Bowles, former defensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before. Now, the only guy they did go outside the box with was Adam Gase, and that was a nightmare to begin with. So everybody knew that was a mistake going in. So it didn't matter what side of the ball that guy coached. He stunk. And then they replaced him with Robert Saleh, defensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before. And they replaced him with now Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before. I just don't understand. I mean, look, the most overused phrase in the history of human beings is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But apparently, that is the New York Jets, because they're still expecting a different result for doing this for 20 years. I don't get it. You know what though? If you're gonna bring in Aaron Glenn, it I've been saying this, and it looks like they're going to hire a guy from Detroit with him that's never been a GM before. So now you're going to have a first-time head coach and a first-time GM. And guess what they're probably going to do too? Pair those two guys with a first-time offensive coordinator, because one of the guys rumored right now is Mark Brunell, who is a former Jet too, who I like, but has never done anything outside of being a quarterback's coach. He's never been an offensive coordinator. He's never called plays. So I just don't understand. The Jets once again are going to be sitting in the back with their fingers crossed, hoping everything works out. I don't understand this, Dan. What do you think about this hire? And let me be fair. I like the hire. I just don't like the process that went into it, and I still have to see his coaching staff. But what do you think, Dan?
I just feel like they should have went with someone who's had experience coaching before. I just feel like this wasn't the right team to bring in a rookie head coach. Just it just wasn't, and it's gonna be a huge nervousness for Jet fans and could easily spell disaster. And I can tell you, be shocked if it turns out anything less than disaster.
Well, I mean, look, it's been a disaster for the last decade, no doubt about that. It's been a disaster, and there's no other way to even put that. You're dead on about that. Now, there are a lot of things I like about Aaron Glenn, so I'll try to be a little bit more positive now. First off, Aaron Glenn is a guy that was a Bill Parcells player. He's got that Bill Parcells type attitude, and he has the ability to be a leader of men as Parcells was. Now we heard the same freaking thing about Robert Saleh, and that turned out to be complete garbage because Robert Saleh let these guys walk all over him. Robert Saleh was, basically stoic on the sideline when anything was going wrong. So there were a lot of things about Robert Saleh that I didn't like. And a lot of the things that we're hearing about Aaron Glenn is kind of the same stuff we heard about Robert Saleh. Great defensive coordinator, leader of men, ready to take on the role. And Robert Saleh wasn't any of that. I don't know, Dan. Do you think is this destined to fail? Are the Jets destined to be 3 years from now looking for another head coach? Or do you think that, the questions about his staff, one thing I think that really saved Dan Campbell in Detroit was the great staff he assembled. He brought in Ben Johnson to be the OC. He brought in Aaron Glenn to be the DC. He brought in a lot of other young guys. He's got Rex Ryan's son over there working on the offensive side of the ball. Mark Brunell, as we know, is the quarterback's coach. So there's a lot of different things to like about the staff that Dan Campbell built. And I feel like if Aaron Glenn can build a good staff, that's going to be one of the biggest things about his tenure here. Because you remember, too, the last time the Jets had a really great coaching staff was under Rex Ryan. And basically all those guys, except for Brian Schottenheimer and Mike Pettin, ended up being head coaches at some point. What do you think about the potential of, a really good staff that Aaron Glenn can build then?
I think maybe that my opinion might change if he brings in a veteran staff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all going to come down to the veteran staff. I forget the guy's name, but they're talking about the defensive coordinator is going to be coming in. A guy, he was the Cardinals head coach back in 2018. Let me see. I forget his name. And so, okay, here it is right here. So this is the guy, Steve Wilkes. That's it. I forgot about Steve Wilkes. So Steve Wilkes, former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. They stunk. They went 3-13 that year. But he also got kind of screwed on the way out there. Went to, he goes to Carolina, and he ends up taking over midway through the year in the 2021 season and went 6-6 down the stretch. So this is a guy that does have some ability. He's been a head coach before. He could help bounce some questions off for Aaron Glenn. So I don't mind that. To be honest, if I was Aaron Glenn, I would even try to go really super staff here and try to convince Rex Ryan to come in as the D coordinator. Now, I think the odds of that are probably low. Obviously, Rex wanted this job in the first place. He also wanted to be the Jets' next head coach. Unfortunately for Rex, it didn't work out. But I would be very interested in bringing him back to the Jets as a DC. And, we've heard a couple of other names kicked around as well. I'm really interested in Mike Westhoff, the one of the best special teams coordinators of all time. He was there under Rex. He was also there under Mangini. He's been to a couple of different places over the last decade since Rex left, but I would love to see him come back here. Not to mention, too, I also heard both Gary Kubiak and his son, Clint Kubiak, mentioned among the lists there. And I would be very interested in both those guys coming in. Gary Kubiak is a Super Bowl winning head coach. And, as you saw with Shanahan and his son and a couple of these other father-son tandems around the league, these kids do tend to pick up a lot from their dad. So I would not have anything against bringing in, a guy like that too. So, what do you think about that, Dan? I mean, not so much, Kubiak coming in would be nice and everything, but what do you think about the potential of Rex or even Steve Wilks, like I mentioned, joining this staff as the defensive coordinator?
I think that would be a good move. That is a move the Jets need to make.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, you definitely, if your head coach is not going to have the experience that we want, the coordinators have to have it. And in my opinion, it can't just be one coordinator; it should be both. Both these guys should have done the job before. Now, so love the signing there of bringing Aaron Glenn in. I'm not crazy about a lot of the stuff surrounding it, but I am positive on Glenn. My one thing, this is going to determine my level of excitement when it comes for this season and the Jets in particular, Dan, is the big question that nobody knows the answer to yet. Does Aaron Glenn and whatever GM he gets paired up with want to keep quarterback Aaron Rodgers? That is such a big thing to me because I saw these numbers before and I was going to bring them up on the screen, but I can't really do that right now. So I want to just say this to you, Dan, right? So this is passing touchdowns and interceptions in the 2020s for the New York Jets. So starting in 2020. 2020, Sam Darnold, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 2,200 yards. Then the next 3 years behind Zach Wilson, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 2,300 yards. 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 1,600 yards. And 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2,200 yards. Not too good. Then you jump to this year, Aaron Rodgers, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 3,900 yards. I mean, it's not even close. I don't understand. I was listening to our buddy Jake Asman a lot today, who was taking calls and talking to Jet fans. And there are a lot of delusional Jet fans out there that don't want Aaron Rodgers back because they convinced themselves after week 6 last year that he was shot. I just don't understand, Dan. If you're a Jet fan, how do you not want Aaron Rodgers back?
Yeah, that is completely absurd. I mean, you want this guy back. He is a very key player. I think it's of most importance that we bring him in for a bridge year.
Yeah, exactly. And he gets to, help set the tone for the new, the new culture that they want to build with head coach Aaron Glenn. He helps, get the quarterback ready, for, taking a year behind him and sitting down and learning. So I don't think that there's, too much bad that could come out of bringing Aaron Rodgers back. I don't want to have Tyrod Taylor as my starting quarterback next year. So to the Jet fans that do want that, you're idiots. I'm sorry. There's no easier way to put that. And so just to wrap up on that, we kick the show off with is that the Jets have officially hired former player, former cornerback, Aaron Glenn, as the new head coach, signs a 5-year deal. And I did, however, want to wrap up with some football here, Dan. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to talk about with everything we just mentioned. But as for the local teams, because unfortunately neither of our teams made the playoffs, I do want to bring this up to you too before we talk real quick about the championship games. Dan, is that your New York Football Giants actually made a um, a coaching change the other day, where they hired a former Jet. Um, let's see, where is that right here? They hired there we go, former Jets defensive back coach, Markand Manuel. Now, this guy, uh, you know, has been lauded across the league for the last couple of years. He's really helped the Jets DBs play well. The Jets have gotten very good contributions from their defensive backs, specifically the safeties and cornerbacks. And a lot of people give a lot of the credit to them being coached up by Manuel here. Brian Dable apparently believes that he can help fix Deontay Banks and Tyler Nubin, both who Banks more so than Nubin showed a lot of flashes this year, but still are unfinished products. Dan, what do you think about bringing this guy in to try to help bring the Giants secondary along?
I think this was a very crucial, definitely a big pickup by the New York Giants.
Now, from a guy that watched basically every game from the Giants this year, do you think that improved defensive back play could help the Giants defense that much? Because we all know up front the Giants have some pretty good guys with Lawrence, their nose tackle. Obviously, they got Thibodeau on the outside. They got Burns on the outside now. So the Giants have some talent there. But do you think that this DB coach helping to coach these kids up could help take this Giant defense to the next level?
I really believe so that they could take this defense to the next level with this team.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think it's definitely it's worth the shot. You know what I mean? It's worth a shot. Bring this guy in. He has a history of helping the defensive back room. And that's exactly what the Giants need now. So I figured we'd touch on that for a minute because that definitely need to be said. The Jets obviously are in a whole new age over there at Florham Park. And the Giants picked a couple of guys off there. It looks like Robert Saleh might be going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that's an interesting scenario unfolding down there right now. But aside from that, Dan, let's wrap up our football talk talking about the two impending championship games coming up this Sunday, Championship Sunday, right here in the NFL. We'll kick it off, Dan, with two teams that you're very familiar with, the NFC Championship game, featuring two NFC East teams, as me and you talked about on Sunday. First time in over 30 years, almost 40 years, since the Giants did it with the Redskins back in '86. So it's been a long time since a couple of NFC East old NFL teams locked up in the NFC Championship game. But, what are your thoughts, Dan? I mean, these two teams took very different paths to get here, but despite your hatred, and understandably so, of both teams, it should be a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, I feel like this one's going to be a close game. It could go down to the fourth quarter. Like, I feel like whatever happens, I feel like early in the fourth quarter could really be the difference between the outcome of the game.
Yeah, man. I mean, Jaden Daniels is really interesting too, because I don't know if you saw, there is this new, like, I guess you could call it practice or whatever that they're trying to impart on him. And the Commanders have developed this like VR thing, kind of like the old Oculus that like Anthony used to have back in the day. But it's something along those lines where they put on like these goggles, and Jaden Daniels is able to basically simulate game situations, and they say he just has it on him all day. So he'll be like, in a VR game, in the middle of a meeting. And I think that's really interesting. What do you think about the use of VR and things along those lines, taking, using technology to try to give your team an advantage? What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, if it works, I'm all for it, and only time will tell. Since this looks like something that's being relatively new that hasn't really been proven or proven wrong yet. So this one's kind of be gonna be over time's gonna be the judge on what's gonna if this is gonna become a new trend throughout the league.
Yeah, and no doubt about it. If the Commanders make the Super Bowl, you'll be hearing a lot of people talk about their quarterbacks wearing VR headsets next year. I don't doubt that one bit if that's the case. But either way, big game. You know, got to give all the credit in the world to Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn and everybody running the Commanders over there. A year ago, they were in the exact same situation as the Jets. And look, this is how quickly a quote unquote rebuild can happen in the NFL. It's been said 1,000 times before, but I think people forget the NFL is a year to year league. And, the Jets have been stuck in a time warp for the last 14, but they're trying to find their way out of it. But look, a team like the Commanders, they got out of the wilderness and they're in the NFC Championship game. Nobody would have thought the Lions were going to be in the NFC Championship game last year, and they did just that. So these turnarounds happen quickly, Dan, and it's going to be interesting one seeing how the Commanders handle themselves in Philly too. It's supposed to be another crappy weather game in Philly, which, by the way, was pretty cool to see that field completely covered in snow on Sunday. That was pretty cool. And you just got to give credit to the Eagles too, because they jumped on Saquon Barkley's back and rode him right to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, exactly. You got to give credit to that. That was just really impressive. And I expect to see an even closer game, a very highly contested game on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right, man. So, all right, let's just do our picks. Why not? If you had to pick right now, Dan, Commanders, Eagles, who are you going with in this game right now?
I just have a feeling the Commanders are going to win this by a touchdown.
Touchdown. Okay. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. You know what though? I think me and you are going head to head on this one, and because I'm picking the Eagles, I think the fact that it's at home, the Eagles have been here before. The Commanders could, and I'm not saying they will be, because look, they got this far. You can't take that away from them. But I do think the Commanders are at that stage now where they could just be the happy to be here team, because nobody expected them to get this far. And meanwhile, the Eagles, it's all business. They won a championship back in 2018. They've been to the Super Bowl since. They lost. They've been to the NFC Championship game. This is a team that's all business right now. And Sirianni and the Eagles, I think, get the job done against the Commanders. And I'm picking them by a field goal. Say so. All right, we're going head to head on that one, and then the Taylor Swift Bowl. Dan, we got. I know you love hearing that. But the AFC Championship game, the Buffalo Bills are visiting Arrowhead, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Man, I got to say this, as much as I hate the Bills, and I'm sure a lot of people are sick of the Kansas City Chiefs, this is going to be a great game. I mean, you've got two of, at least in recent times, two of the best quarterbacks going up against it, two of the best quarterbacks in the last 20, 25 years, if not more than that, going up. AFC Championship game, spot in the Super Bowl on the line. This is the real heavyweight battle, in my opinion. You got the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs going against the Bills. No team in the Super Bowl era has ever advanced to 3 consecutive Super Bowls. Me and you were talking about this on our Sunday Patreon show, Dan. The last time that this even occurred and even had a chance to happen was 1990, when the New York Giants defeated the San Francisco 49ers, who were going for their third straight Super Bowl championship. The Giants upset them in San Francisco in insane fashion, 15-13. And that's the last time that anybody has even had the opportunity to play in 3 consecutive Super Bowls. The Chiefs take it up this week. So what do you think about that, Dan? A lot of history and everything on the line this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like this game, for some reason, Buffalo's going to win this by 2 touchdowns, about by 2 field goals.
Wow. Okay. So almost a full touchdown. So you got them up by 6. Okay. So you got Buffalo. So do you think it's going to be? I mean, because supposedly the temperatures in Arrowhead are going to be freezing. Now you know that's not going to. It's not like Buffalo is the Dolphins or anything. They know how to play in cold weather, as we saw this past Sunday as well. But or this past Saturday actually. But Dan, what do you think? Do you think it's going to be a like a low scoring defensive game, or do you think that it's going to be more like a 36-30 game?
I feel like it's going to be a low scoring defensive game, I feel like. And I just feel like Buffalo has the edge on this, if that's the case.
Well, I do have to say that I could definitely see it being a low scoring game. I mean, look, we saw the Chiefs all year have struggled for the most part offensively. I think the Chiefs were one of the only teams in the league that didn't score 30 points this year. I could be wrong about that. Maybe they did it late or something like that. But I know up until late, it was like the Giants, the Jets, the Chiefs, and maybe one other team that still hadn't scored 30. The Giants dropped 45. The Jets dropped 30 twice late in the season. And the Chiefs, I don't believe they did. So, but the Chiefs live and die on their defense. Dan, you know Steve Spagnuolo very well, the former defensive coordinator of the New York Giants. He's a great defensive coordinator. This is a guy going for yet another championship from that DC role. And I do think if this ends up being a defensive battle, I think the Chiefs are going to find a way to pull it out because they just always do. And also, like I said about the Eagles, the fact that it's in Kansas City is going to be really tough for the Bills to overcome. I feel like the Bills' best chance at going to the Super Bowl was if they were able to get home field and hosted this game.
Yeah, exactly. But I just hope, for the sake of it, that they win this and I can enjoy a Taylor Swift free Super Bowl. And and
Well,
ho- and and if worst case scenario happens that the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl and win it, that they win it, and potentially those rumors about Travis Kelsey retiring is true. And once that'll happen, we can get back to Taylor Swift free football once Travis Kelsey retires.
yes, I'm definitely with you on that. But as a Jets fan, I cannot, in all good conscience, root for the Buffalo Bills and those fans up there to enjoy anything. So, as we did mention on our Patreon show too, the only Bills fan I would be happy for if they happen to win the Super Bowl would be our buddy Carl Hamburger from Who Are These Podcasts. So that would be the one silver lining, but as a Jets fan, it would kill me inside. Just like it killed me inside to see the Braves win a World Series a couple of years ago, just like it killed me inside to see the Nationals win the World Series a couple of years ago, and even the Phillies get there. So yeah, that's definitely the last thing I want to see is the
Yeah,
Bills winning.
yeah, exactly. I feel you in that one. But yeah, that's how it's gonna. But yeah, that's how it's gonna turn out. And I just gotta hope that whatever happens, as long as it's not the Chiefs winning it, or
Definitely.
at the very least, the Chiefs win and Travis Kelsey retires. I will celebrate the moment I get the news that Travis Kelsey is retiring.
You and me both, buddy. You and
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah,
both.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Because I think there are
yeah.
two ways football could be saved: Travis Kelsey retires, or Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift break up. And even though even though anyone who, depending where you are and depending what radio station you were subject to hearing at work, you're gonna have to hear that breakup song at nauseum because you know that's gonna
Oh
happen.
yeah.
You know that would happen. That breakup song would be played at nauseum.
That's coming. No doubt about it, buddy. So all right, I think that's gonna do it for us on the football right now. Let's get to the second half of the show. We'll touch on the little hockey and basketball in a minute, but first, I did want to get to a couple of hot stove topics here, buddy. as we got the Mets making a couple of signings in the last week, and also we got a little Hall of Fame discussion to get into in a minute. But first, before we get in the Hall, I do want to discuss what the Mets did. So first off, we hear, and we'll talk this first before the actual signings. But first off, we hear that the Mets have pivoted from trying to sign Pete Alonso. They went out and signed Jesse Winker, who, by the way, is not a first baseman, although he can play a little first base. I saw in his press conference this afternoon, said he can play a little first base. But Jesse Winker is an outfielder for all intents and purposes and DH. But the Mets brought him back 1 year, $8 million. But we only heard about this after we heard the Mets had pivoted from Pete Alonso. Now, I'm happy they brought back Jesse Winker. I want Winker back. But what I'm not happy about is how the hell do they connect the fact that you bring back Jesse Winker and somehow that means that the Mets pivoted from Pete Alonso? And that's been reported by a lot of different sources right now. I don't understand. First off, how are you replacing 35 home runs and 90 RBIs in the lineup next year, especially in a year now where you're going to have somebody come in and protect Juan Soto? That is, unless you want him to walk 200 times next year and do nothing. But I don't know, Dan. I don't understand what is the deal with this pivoted crap. I hope that it's wrong. I hope that maybe Stevie Cohen can still pick up the phone and save Pete Alonso from leaving the Mets, because it seems like Alonso has nowhere to go, and the Mets have no one to put at first base. So what the hell are we doing here? How is he still a free agent?
I can't see this. I really feel like, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping they somehow pull a move that he somehow all of a sudden maybe last minute when we least expect it, all of a sudden I get a news that Pete Alonso's returning to the Mets. My gut feeling just is that is leaning toward that, because so many teams have that looked like Pete Alonso was rumored to have already signed a player that feels like that fit their needs. So I just have an inkling that it's bound to happen. Pete Alonso is going to be re-signed with the Mets, similar to how remember how even though it didn't turn out so well, remember how JD Martinez all of a sudden I didn't expect that one to happen, and all of a sudden we got the news that happened. I have a feeling that's going to happen, and hopefully this one doesn't take too long to happen.
That's the thing, Dan. They
I
can't
don't,
let this go into March 25th like they did with JD. They can't let that happen.
Yeah, they can't let that happen, and I'm hoping they won't let that happen. Hopefully they resolve this quick. And I don't want to see Pete Alonso somewhere else. I don't want to see one of our biggest stars somewhere else. I already had to deal with the pain of this, losing Jacob deGrom. We at the time, I remember it didn't work out so well, maybe because all the injuries and stuff caught up to Jose Reyes. But I was upset when that happened with Reyes. I don't want this, and of course there's a generation before us. There's generations before us that had to deal with the pain of losing Tom Seaver. I hear about that from my mom and other relatives. That other relatives and anyone on social media that lived through 77. I don't want to experience it. I don't want to know what that feels like.
Yeah, man, I'm with you.
I don't want this to be another equivalent of when the Mets lost out on Darryl Strawberry, who who should have been with the Mets his entire career.
Yeah, man. Now let me ask you this, Dan. Because this is how I feel, as happy as I am going to be and thrilled to see Juan Soto in a Met uniform next year, it's going to take away from the fact that, I don't know how to explain this better than saying that maybe I'll be 40 to 50% less happy about the Soto deal if the Mets don't also have Pete Alonso there. Does that make any sense? Because
that does,
right?
I feel that does take away from it a little bit. I mean, I'll still be enthusiastic about the season, but I feel they need to do that. And today, I also really feel like David Stearns got lucky last year, but needs to really, in the long run, really need to make a move. They need to get that pitching. I feel like also, I just feel like it's just tough competition that it's what's going to be needed to overcome that hurdle.
Well, Dan, you hit the nail on the head right there, and provided a great segue there as you talked about the pitching, because I'm with you on that. Now, me and you both are very skeptical about the Mets rotation right now. Maybe a little bit less skeptical than we were last year, mainly because of the results they got last year. So we're not going to be as upset as we were at this point last season. But we both definitely aren't too thrilled with the Mets starting rotation right now. However, the one thing we did keep saying too is that we wanted the Mets to improve the bullpen, the bullpen, the bullpen, the bullpen. Now, the guy me and you both had our eye on, and a lot of Met fans did, was Tanner Scott. Now, Tanner Scott decided to be an asshole, and like the rest of these jerk-offs going around baseball these days, signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers for an exorbitant amount of money. So the Mets lost out on him. However, the Mets did get a good deal on a former a former Atlanta Brave lefty. This is a guy that's been in that organization his entire career, won a World Series with them back in 2021, and comes to the Mets on a big deal. 2 years, $22 million. So the Mets guaranteed this guy $11 million a year as a lefty reliever out of the pen. That's pretty big. He's going to be a back end guy. I like putting him with Edwin Diaz at the back end of the Mets bullpen. I still think the Mets probably need another guy or two in that bullpen, but AJ Minter, really good start to try to fill out the back end of that bullpen.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big deal. And the other thing I just feel like is that I feel like the Mets need to eventually. I don't see any pitching depth in their farm system that's close to this year.
Yeah, it's true.
It's
Yeah, I
just
mean,
it shocked me, and I hope they improve on this soon enough. And
but
one of our better pitching prospects, I forget his name, Zach Scott. Did I get his name right?
I believe so. I think you got that right.
Yeah. He's gonna miss the entire year, and it's a question mark of when he's gonna come back.
Yeah.
And then I'm hearing that our luck. We've had our pitching prospects get injured, have Tommy John surgery. Our luck. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Even they're not even in the big leagues yet, and they get these injuries. That question mark if they're even going to turn out anything. We see this. I hear this prospect, Matt Allen, is throwing for the first time in years. I forgot this guy was even still in the farm system, still
I
trying to.
saw that too.
I'm
Yeah,
shocked
he's
this
coming
guy
back.
is still trying to make it in baseball, because it's like this
The
guy
last
looks like
time he was relevant as a Mets prospect was pre-COVID. That's like how long
yeah,
it's been. Isn't that crazy?
that's surprising. It's just he has just had such a slow recovery from Tommy John that I did not even think there was going to be anything that I was going to hear that name mentioned again when I was hearing when I'm looking at various prospect blogs. So it's going to be a lot, and who knows. And I can't see unless anything all of a sudden emerges during and then the other thing, I don't know if this he actually went through with this. This is a risk. Juan Soto playing winter ball.
So wait, Juan Soto's playing winter ball?
Yeah. I heard about this. I don't know if this was true.
I didn't hear about it, but if Juan Soto is playing winter ball, then someone should just go and kick Steve Cohen in the balls. I don't care. You just gave a guy $800 million. If he's playing winter ball, the Mets are fucking idiots.
Yeah. I don't know if that actually happened. I've been hearing stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to keep track of. But I was like, what the fuck? Hopefully he backed out of this one, because we don't need to deal with this headache again. We don't need to deal with that headache again. All right.
But Dan, real quick on, what do you think about this this Minter deal though? It's pretty damn good, man. This guy is just as good as Tanner Scott, and Mets got him at a lot less.
Well, it'll be a big deal if for once we could see us having a relievers that don't give me a heart attack for 162 games, plus 162 plus. I gotta emphasize the plus part.
That's true, man. So, all right, very cool. With that, we both like that signing. Think it's going to help Mets bullpen out there. But yeah, definitely agree with you though. They have to increase their depth. But real quick, when we wrap up on the baseball here, Some Hall of Fame talk real quick. The Hall of Fame results came out, and look,
Yeah.
I consider myself a Hall of Fame purist, so there is a lot of issues I have with the voting these days. A lot of these guys should not have a vote. These writers are just I can't even say it on YouTube. These writers are stupid. These writers are assholes. This is the 2025 Hall of Fame class. Billy Wagner, who in my opinion is not a Hall of Famer. CC Sabathia got in on the first ballot. CC Sabathia is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He might be CC, 250 wins, a Cy Young, 3,000 strikeouts. Sure, CC deserves to get consideration, and I have no problem with him being a Hall of Famer. CC Sabat, Ichiro Suzuki, slam dunk Hall of Famer, first ballot, not even a thought. Him and Ichiro are not in the same category. Sabathia does not belong as a first ballot Hall of Famer. The guy had a 3.7 ERA. Since when can you have a near 4 ERA and be a first ballot Hall of Famer? Give me a break. They might as well just change the name of the Hall of Fame to the Hall of Pretty Good, because that's what they've changed it into. Billy Wagner never got an out in his life that mattered. He had 2 less saves than John Franco, who stinks. So how the hell is Billy Wagner a Hall of Famer? The only guy that should have been in here this year is Ichiro, and it's a joke. I can't even get that worked up about it
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Baseball
yeah,
Hall of
yeah.
Fame doesn't even mean anything. But what do you think, Dan?
I think the other thing that should have happened, and I hope, and they better rectify this next year. Carlos Beltran should be in the Hall of Fame.
Beltran absolutely should be a Hall of Famer. Second most home runs ever for a switch hitter. The only guy that has more home runs than him as a switch hitter is Mickey Mantle, and not to mention he was a great defensive, guy. He won the World Series with the Astros, which I love to say because it burns everybody's ass. It's the fact that Beltran is not in, but Billy Wagner and CC Sabathia are, shows that a bunch of children that hate the 2017 Astros are the only ones voting these days. It's a joke. I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Billy Wagner's a Hall of Famer. Come on.
Yeah, and another thing I think about the Hall of Fame, when you look about this, about the Veterans Committee and stuff, Keith Hernandez already, get him in, put him in the Hall of Fame already.
Hernandez, and by the way, Keith Hernandez and Don Mattingly should both be in the Hall of Fame. And I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, Don Mattingly." You could look at Mattingly's career getting cut short the same way that Sandy Koufax did. Don Mattingly, for the period in the '80s, was the best player in baseball, the face of baseball, and won an MVP. Mattingly, in my opinion, should go in with Keith Hernandez.
Yeah, exactly. And if Keith Hernandez gets into the Hall of Fame, no joke, in time for that ceremony, we will, if he gets into the Hall of Fame eventually, we will find a way to be there for that ceremony because we advocated for it. So it's only right that we're there since we advocated for it. I will try to grow a mustache that looks like him, attempt for that time period, specifically for that day. I will only have that mustache that specific day, but it'll probably grow in a bit in advance to make sure it's ready. But for that time period, for at least that day, up until that whatever it starts growing, and up until that day, I will have that mustache.
You know what? As a matter of fact, if Keith Hernandez gets in, Dan, I will shave the rest of my beard and only keep the mustache. And me and you will have the mustaches in favor of Keith Hernandez, and we'll go to Cooperstown to see him get in.
Yeah, exactly. And if Keith Hernandez ever gets in, Jerry Seinfeld needs to drive him to the ceremony. Needs to drive him to Cooperstown.
And help him move afterwards, too. You saw the
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that really helping him, but maybe helping him move his stuff into where Keith Hernandez lives during the baseball season to call, when he's calling the games here in New
Exactly.
York. Maybe have Jerry carry his bags in the airport or something like that.
Exactly. Or maybe Jerry could carry his new Hall of Fame bust, which would be awesome to see. So, yeah,
Yeah, you're exactly.
Yeah, what were you going to
Yeah, exactly.
say? So, all right, little Hall of Fame there. Yeah, let's wrap this thing up now, talking about a little our MSG teams. We'll kick it off with the New York Rangers, who I know you were psyched last night because the Rangers, man, ever since their downward spiral started in November, this is the most complete game I have seen the Rangers play in at least 2 to 3 months. They dominated the Senators. And let's not forget, last night was a big game. It was probably the most meaningful game of the season so far for the Rangers, too, because the Rangers were playing the Senators, who have both played the same amount of games, and the Senators had a 4-point lead on the Rangers. So the Rangers, by beating them in regulation last night, cut that in half to 2 points. So the Rangers are right there, only 2 points out of a playoff spot. And could you imagine, Dan, how we were just talking a couple of weeks ago, how, this season felt like it was basically over? This team has clawed its way back into the playoff hunt.
Yeah, that is crazy. How the fuck that happened? I gotta tell you something. There was something crazy that happened during this game. The day of this yesterday, I think sometime I was it was about like maybe an hour or so before the game was going to start, maybe an hour and a half. My sister, crazy enough, begged me to watch the movie Wicked with her. I don't know why she did. She begged me to watch it with her, and I just felt bad. I didn't want to upset my sister. I said, "All right, I'll watch this with you," even though I really wanted to watch the game. So I found myself stuck watching this movie with her, and just I had my phone on the Gotham Sports app, right? I had the Gotham Sports app on my phone. Had it on silent. I'm like, I'm just taking a glance at the score on and off, and it's like all of a sudden, then it's like by the time the movie ended, I'm rushed. As soon as the movie ended, I'm rushing to my TV, watching the room. I rushed to my room, watched the rest, caught the second period, the end of the second period of the Rangers game, caught them just starting to pull away, and we actually won. I, but I'm gonna do something. I suggest we do something crazy if the Rangers somehow go from not looking like they're gonna make it to make it to playoffs. If the Rangers make the playoffs, the both of us will sing a song of my sister's choosing from that movie. Are you game for
See,
it?
I was going to say the Rangers. I was going to say me and you should sing the Rangers victory song, but a song from Wicked would be very funny.
Yeah, believe me, if the Rangers win the cup, we'll hopefully we manage to. If the Rangers win the whole thing, we'll sing the Rangers victory song. That'll happen as well. That'll happen as well. There'll be footage of us singing the Rangers song, but I just thought it's crazy enough that happened during watching this movie. One of the biggest blowout of a win, like a momentum swinging win, happened during that movie. I just thought it'd be funny to both of us to sing a song for that movie of my sister's choosing. She will pick the song. We will sing it.
Makes sense. I'm in. Sign me up. And tell your sister, too, that for the next couple of big Rangers games, she's got to invite you to watch Wicked, because maybe that's a good luck charm.
Yeah, maybe I gotta sit through that movie before every game the rest of the season. As much as it'll annoy me, and it's already enough. I got the soundtrack of that movie stuck in my head because anytime I'm in the car with my sister, anytime I've had to go, I went somewhere by car and she was driving. If she's driving, no joke, my sister listens to that soundtrack in the car, so I have to hear it at nauseum enough already.
Well, Dan, here's the big question for you. If I told you that if you watch Wicked before or during every Ranger game for the rest of the year, including the playoffs, that they will win the Stanley Cup, would that be worth it?
I will do that. Not only will I do that, if the Rangers win the Stanley Cup, I don't I don't know how we got to do this. Maybe some outside source gets us the tickets. The both of us will see a performance of it together.
Definitely, definitely. And you know what? If the Rangers are gonna start that march to the Stanley Cup, it looks like they might have already started it, because look at this, Dan. They're on a 9-game point streak right now. They're 6-0-3, meaning that they've won 6 games. They did lose 3, but those 3 losses were in overtime, so the Rangers did get a point for each one of those losses. Um, it was tough to lose that game the other night in Montreal. But look, the Canadiens have been playing really good hockey lately. They're 11-2 in their last 13 coming into that game. So the fact that the Rangers were able to get a point there was really big. Montreal is always tough. And one of the other big things that's going to help this team turn around, Dan, is Igor Shesterkin. The Rangers go as Igor Shesterkin goes, and Igor now has back-to-back shutouts for the 5th time in his NHL career. And just look at this. Over his last 6 games, 5-0-1, 943 save percentage, 2 shutouts. When Igor's rolling, man, it's going to be tough to stop the Rangers.
Yeah, I just have a feeling it's going to turn out to be a big season that's going to make me fall off the couch a lot. Like, Igor is back, baby! He's back! Like, there was never a doubt in my mind that he was capable of this.
Exactly. Igor's like Frank Costanza. He's back, baby.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And we keep carrying this momentum.
and he's going to be making us say serenity now.
Yep. Exactly. I swear.
So, yeah, man. So Igor rolling, that's a good thing too. And another good thing for our Ranger team right now is another guy who got paid big money a couple of months ago, but really hasn't done much this year overall, is Alexis Lafreniere. But he's starting to heat up too now. All of a sudden, his last 4 games, he's got 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists. He looked good last night again, had a goal and assist in that game. He scored 2 goals last week in a game they lost. So he's starting to pick up his offensive production. And look, I know that his extension that he signed doesn't kick in until next year, but he's still making pretty decent money this year. And then it's going to jump up to $7+ million next year. The Rangers are going to need a lot out of Alexis Lafreniere. He's going to have to become one of their top, I know he is a top 6 guy already, but he's going to have to really be one of their elite players. And hopefully it looks like maybe he's starting to take a step in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like Lafreniere is starting to finally take a step in a direction. I feel like this team has caught a second wind. I don't know what it is, but they've caught a second wind, and keep him up.
Yeah, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. It looks like they really did catch a second wind, somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and I just feel like the rest of the way, it's gonna just be a lot of me being so loud in front of the TV. Mr. Malunigan's gonna be barking like a maniac.
No doubt about it, man. And the rest of the way, it's gonna kick off on Thursday night at the Garden, 7 p.m. Flyers are visiting, so the Rangers have been playing good lately too, and some people were worried maybe they're a little beat up, maybe they're a little tired. They played a lot lately. Well, if any team is going to wake them up, it's a John Tortorella, Philadelphia, a John Tortorella coached Philadelphia Flyers team. This team is a hard-hitting team. They got a lot of skill. The Rangers usually do seem to play pretty well against them. The Flyers have had an up and down season this year. But, if I'm the Rangers, you don't take this team lightly. You go out there and you do everything you can to get those 2 points.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping they manage to win this and beat the crap out of that team with that registered sex offender mascot.
Yeah, really, the good old Flyers over there with what the hell's his name again?
I don't know, Gritty. He looks like a Muppet.
Gritty, that's what it is.
He looks
Gritty,
looks like a Muppet that snorted a hell of a lot of cocaine.
He definitely does. He's a Muppet that's been hanging out with Hunter Biden.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. On to the other MSG team right now, as we see the Rangers are starting to straighten things out too. The New York Knicks, though, they've been playing pretty good ball all season. They hit a little rough stretch for a couple of games about 2 or 3 weeks ago. They've straightened it out since then. They had a 9-game winning streak at one point, but now they just swept a back-to-back from the Hawks and the Nets. And, obviously, two teams that are not that great. The Nets are garbage, 14-30, but they always play the Knicks tough, especially on the second half of a back-to-back. That's a real emotional game that if you get drawn into certain things, you can blow that. And the Knicks kept their cool, beat the Nets 99-95 at Barclays yesterday. And the day before that, it was a 119-100 win over the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young, who have been a pain in the ass for the Knicks over the last few years. So those are two teams to get, right against, basically. And nice to see the Knicks put them down. They're 30-6, they're 29-16, 13 games over 500 right now. So the Knicks are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, exactly. They need to keep up this momentum and keep it up, and stop making me nervous and yelling at the TV a lot.
Yeah, that Nets game yesterday got a little too close for comfort at the end there. But the Knicks were able to pull it out. I think the depth problem with the Knicks that we've discussed about at length this year is still an issue. They're going to have to add somebody, preferably a guy that could be like a sixth man. So that's going to be interesting to see how they pull that one out. But the good thing for the Knicks, though, the good news is that they did get Karl Anthony Towns back, who was unavailable to them for the 2 games prior. He comes back and he's still dealing with a banged up finger. He's got this injury to, I believe, his index finger, where he still doesn't have full mobility in it. But he wouldn't have noticed it last night. 26 points, 26 rebounds. 26 points and 16 rebounds. Karl Anthony Towns still looking pretty good. The only thing that this finger injury is really affecting is his ability to shoot the 3 ball, which, by the way, he was shooting coming into this year. Coming into this game before this, he was shooting a career high 45% from 3, which, by the way, isn't it insane? The NBA in 2024, your starting center is a 45% free throw 3-point shooter. That's insane enough. But ever since he got injured, he's 1 for 10 shooting from 3. So maybe he's gonna have to wait for his finger. But damn, isn't that crazy? Damn, a center shooting 45% from 3.
That is just something else. That is crazy. That cheat that cheat in that old NES game. Remember how that NES game double dribble, that one little spot, like guaranteed threes every time.
You're right.
And I think I remember there was a trick like that. There was one spot I remember when I'm playing NBA Jam. I would get like multiple threes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that, but that's what that's like.
It really is. It's like a cheat code. It's like having Game Genie as your center over there. So shout out to Karl Anthony Towns for being back on the court. He's being tough too, because that finger is still bothering him, and he still went out there and played a great game in a win where the Knicks desperately needed him last night. If Karl Anthony Towns didn't play that game against the Nets last night, they'd probably find a way to lose that game. So shout out to KAT for getting out on the floor.
Yep, and the crazy part about it is that game, because I the circumstance yesterday was only able to do like one game, one screen. I couldn't do my 2-screen thing. I watched that game after work. I had it on record.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like I'm eating my breakfast and I'm watching that game.
That's a smart move.
I avoided any social media mentions of that game, so I could look at that.
Yeah, it's a smart move. That's a good game to watch. As the Knicks led through most of it, the Nets made it close at the end, but the Knicks were able to pull ahead with the victory. So definitely a nice game to have your morning breakfast too. You're not going to be having breakfast to this one though, pal. On Saturday night, it's going to be the Knicks and the Kings. So it's nice too, because after a back-to-back on Monday and Tuesday, the Knicks get Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. So, much deserved couple of days off there for the guys. And they get back together at the Garden Saturday night against the Kings. Let's not forget the Kings. This is not, the Sacramento Kings team that have been kicked around for the last decade or so. This is a very good young Kings team. They're playing under their talent level right now so far, 22-20 to open this year. But this is a dangerous team that the Knicks should not take lightly. But, nice getting them on the West Coast trip, coming over to the East Coast. So maybe the Knicks can use that in their favor and get a nice win and pick up their 30th win of the year.
Yeah, exactly. They need to not take this game against Sack of Tomato seriously. And of course, I have to reference the great Steve Summers. I just
Of
remember
course.
he always used to put out Sacramento Sack of Tomato.
Gotta love the schmooze. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, absolutely. Knicks and the Sack of Tomatoes on Saturday night at the Garden. That's the next game, and that's gonna do it for us this week on Best Seat in the House podcast. Dan, before we get out of here, do you have anything like to plug for yourself?
Sure, my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC, Instagram, Bobo718DK, same username on Threads. Also, YouTube's one word, Daniel Curlin. You can see all the Bobo content there on YouTube. You might see something on my YouTube with us that you guys will get 2 weeks early access to. That we're gonna that I mentioned to you that we're filming. I think you saw the little video. You saw the little dance that I was trying to show you in the video, right?
Yes,
In that
yes.
little squid put that a lot of people have been making little silly comments about it and stuff that watch season 2 of Squid Game. So I just thought it'd be a little funny thing to tie it since there seems to be a lot of people that have been watching it that maybe would get a kick out of seeing us imitate that little silly dance. You gotta get 2 weeks early access to the video once we film it on Saturday. That's all I can tell you.
Exactly. So make sure to check out our Patreon and Dan's podcast, Dan's YouTube as well. So make sure to check that out, Daniel Curlin on YouTube and Best Seat in the House podcast on Patreon as well. So we appreciate
subscribe to the Patreon because you'll get 2 weeks early access to it. That's all I can tell you.
That's right. And so that's going to do it for us today on the Best Seat in the House podcast. Don't forget, before we get out of here, check us out on Twitter at @beast_podcast and Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast as well. Don't forget, if you want to listen to our shows, you can also check us out on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get it. So we appreciate all the support.
We'll even implant the single to your brain if that technology exists.
That's correct. That's correct. Or we could actually even send it up to a satellite where if you want to be stationed with 2 robots, you could actually view it for yourself and have a couple of mad scientists, read your mind and see how it's affecting you, right, Dan? What do you think about that?
Yeah, exactly. We could do that. We could do that if you wanted to. Once we have the budget for a rocket.
All right. So for the Best Seat in the House podcast, I'm your host, Rob Cramer. This is my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin, and we'll catch you next week on the Best Seat in the House podcast. Everybody, have a great weekend.
All right, that was a